start.
Okay. Therefore, contributes to the monitoring of biodiversity, the prevention of...
Hi, my name is Chris Elisara. Thank you for being here. Today I'm just going to provide, in a short amount of time, a briefing on what evangelicals do on biodiversity. It's a big world, so it's got to be very selective, but I've picked a few things that will give you an understanding of what we do, what our concerns are, and how we can go forward to advance our work in biodiversity and caring for creation. I co-direct the Creation Care, I co-direct the Sustainability Center, which is based in Bonn, with Matthias Bonning, and together we serve the World Evangelical Alliance. So let me just start off by saying what the World Evangelical Alliance is. And we're an old organization that started in 1846, so we're 176 years old. We seek to strengthen local churches through national alliances, supporting and coordinating grassroots leadership, and seeking practical ways of showing the unity of the body of Christ. And our big vision is that we would work for unity among evangelicals globally for gospel transformation. We have a mission, we have an aspiration that moves us forward into a membership of approximately somewhere around 600 million, and we're organized through alliances, national alliances. I live in San Diego, so our national alliance is the National Alliance of Evangelicals, based in Washington, D.C. And there's a national alliance here in Canada, there's national alliances in over 129 countries. Those national alliances form regional configurations, so we have regional alliances in 9 different regions: Africa, Asia, the South Pacific, North America, and so on. That gives us another organizing layer for the World Evangelical Alliances. We have an executive team, and its Secretary General, who's based in Bonn right now, and we have 6 programmatic departments. These are the programmatic departments: alliance engagement, so that's bringing the alliances together, working together, unity; church engagement at a church level, so getting churches engaging and working together; then public engagement, global advocacy, global theology, and global witness. My work with the Sustainability Center and Creation Care comes under global advocacy, but also public engagement sometimes. So I kind of flip between engagement and advocacy. And we had the pleasure of Janet Buckingham, who directs the entire public engagement office, Canadian, here with us for 4 or 5 days, working with me here in Montreal at COP15. So that's a little story of who the World Evangelical Alliance is. And the first briefing point I want to bring to everybody is about the global network that we have.
I just had a question.
Yes.
In the previous slide,
Yes.
when it said global witness, something,
Yes.
what's exactly?
Global witness. Global witness, from our Evangelical perspective, is just sharing, our faith, being a witness to the truth and the vitality of Jesus in our lives, and just expressing that, sharing that love, and pointing towards the reasons that we are a community of faith, and that connects to the truths of Scripture, the reality of Jesus Christ. So that's what that witness is about is all about. But just backing back, thanks for the question. But we have a global network that we've been developing. I started this work in 2010. In 2010, the Lausanne movement, which is another global evangelical organization, the WEA, held a global gathering. They called them Lausanne 3. We met in Cape Town, put together a statement called Cape Town Commitments, and basically reiterated some of the core beliefs that evangelicals have, and some core direction of travel for the way that evangelicalism can be present in the world. And there was some good creation care work that was included in that statement, the Cape Town Commitments. But a part of the Cape Town Commitments was to go away and amplify on creation care, amplify on urban mission, amplify on other aspects that the statement spoke to, but you knew that you could develop it further. So a group of leaders met in Jamaica, and we put together, after consultation and discussion, the global statement for evangelicals, the Jamaica Gospel and the Care of Creation statement. That led to a relationship with Lausanne and WEA called the Creation Care Network. And on the slide you see the Pollinator, which is our newsletter for our global network. Coming out of Jamaica, Ed Brown, Dave Bookless, and others had a vision to do conferences around the world, gathering people from a region who are caring for creation and getting them into relationships so they could support each other, that they could collaborate together. And so over the last 10 years, we've been having conferences led by the Lausanne WA Creation Care Network and Russia and other partners. We just finished the last one in Jordan for the MENA region. So now we have a global network of evangelical creation care organizations, and our newsletter has approximately 3,500 subscribers. That represents these organizations that are all around the world, cultivated through this initiative of conferences, gathering people together. So if you want to know more about our global network, look up Lausanne WA Creation Care, and then look up the Pollinator. And this photograph here at the bottom is the individuals that came from the MENA region to attend the last conference that we've done. And with this network, we're able to do a lot of creation care work all around the world. A bit of my story is that I'm a New Zealander. I grew up in New Zealand, did undergraduate work in New Zealand, and I came to the United States to do an MBA in International Economic Development. I was going to work in small-scale entrepreneurship with poor communities, so I came to Eastern University and did an MBA there. And then I was involved in Evangelical Social Action, and as a student leader, when I went to do my PhD, because of my work in leadership and Evangelical Social Action, I got called to this little gathering. There's a church in Northern California that had a church-based creation care ministry, and I wanted to expand it to a national movement. And they were students of Christian history enough to know that sometimes students and student movements were able to be used by God to change the church and to mobilize the church in new directions. And so they gathered these student leaders, and I was fortunate to be selected to be a part of that small group. In that group, it was the very first time, and I'm doing my PhD at this time, it was the first time that I ever had heard through all those years that underneath a healthy and vibrant and just economic system was the necessity for a healthy, thriving ecological system, right? And I never heard that before. So I was first of all shocked and dismayed, and then I started to learn more about about this, and that's how I got into creation care as an evangelical Christian. But one of the things that it spurred me to do was to think about the lost opportunity of bringing a correction to Christian education in this particular area. So I started the Creation Care Study Program. And the Creation Care Study Program is an international study abroad program. We serve about 30 different Christian colleges and universities in the United States. And they come to learn in our program in New Zealand and in Belize for an entire semester how to care for creation, how to care for people and place. So they come and live in a intentional learning community, and there they learn how to care for place by the community that's already there, caring for place, and they learn about streams, forests, and marine ecosystems, the way that God put the world together ecologically. They study the Bible, and we study theologies, learn what God teaches about creation, about how we to care for it, how we care for each other, how we need to put together our economic systems in a just way, how we live with each other in a just and right way. So our theology class, and then we do literature because we're an environmental studies class, so environmental literature and art. But the keystone course of class is our sustainable community development class, and that's where you put together God's ecological systems, God's human communities, and how we can live sustainably in right relationship between people communities, animal communities, plant communities, streams, rivers, and so on. So in that Sustainable Community Development class, in the Creation Care Study Program, students now have an opportunity to get the education that I didn't get until very late in my academic career. Thankfully, however, even at that time, there were other places that were doing creation care education. I just didn't hear about them, I just didn't know about them. El Sabo, for example, is one of those in the United States. In the UK, there's others as well. So it's been growing over these last 20, 25 years. But if you want to know about the Creation Care Study Program, these are two photographs. In terms of biodiversity, we live in an incredible marine hotspot for marine mammals. There's a resident population of sperm whale there, and we have dolphins and so on. And so this is some students and the program director, Courtney Wilson, in her sea kayaks in Kaikoura in the South Island of New Zealand, having a dolphin encounter. And they are also working with local conservationists. This is the Hutton shearwater that nests in New Zealand in the Kaikoura region. And here our students are helping and learning about the Hutton shearwater program. So this is an example of something that I personally am doing. And continuing on, and just in terms of picking up this educational theme, we have universities all across the world that are training students in biology, that are contributing to, in other subjects, not just biology, but other subjects as well, economics, business, biology, to care for creation, putting it all together. And with me this week has been a professor from Westmont College, Amanda Sparkman, who's on my program way back. She actually met her husband on my program too, our program. And now she's a professor and leads the Department of Biology at Westmont College in Santa Barbara. And she was here, but she had to leave. But she provided this presentation. She was going to present with me today, but I'm just going to play her presentation. And she wants to speak a little bit about Christian higher education, again, in the United States, and some of the challenges and opportunities for biodiversity.
Good morning, COP15. This morning I'd like to talk to you about what I see as some of the opportunities and challenges for evangelical Christian colleges, particularly in America, in meeting this biodiversity crisis and how we can help prepare our students and reach out to evangelical communities. So there has been decades of good scholarship and strong work that has reached a large number of evangelicals, showing a real theological basis for caring for creation, how it's really inherent to who we are in our identity as Christians from the very beginning, from Genesis and throughout the scriptures, including Caldewitt's classic Earthwise all the way up to more recent works like my colleague at Westmont, Stewards of Eden by Sandy Richter. And many of these have been written by faculty at Christian colleges and universities. At the same time, there's been a proliferation of several really key environmental groups within the evangelical realm, including WAA and Arasha, which are represented here at COP15, but also those that particularly serve Christian colleges and education for students, such as Osable Institute of Environmental Studies and the Creation Care Study Program. And in fact, recent Pew study suggests that, like other religious Americans, evangelicals do largely believe that God gave humans a duty to protect and care for the earth. So around 86%, which is right up there with other folks. And they believe that Scripture has lessons, though maybe a larger proportion, though few of them actually pray for the environment, which suggests there's some sort of disconnect there between maybe a theological conviction and practice. But when you look at specific issues, this survey, for instance, showed that evangelicals tend to lag, for instance, on being concerned about climate change. And we know that this has become a very political and partisan issue. But I would say, in reality, evangelicals have not been at the forefront of caring for creation. And so I think there's a lot of work to do that I think Christian colleges and universities really can play a role there. There's a lot of us across the United States in particular that we do have a global reach. But I think there's so many opportunities for us to work both on individual campuses and also work together to make this more about make more of a concerted response to the crisis that we're in. I'm speaking to you as a representative from the faculty of Westmont College, which is a very small Christian college in the foothills of Santa Barbara. It's at the Santa Ynez Mountains. We're just a few miles from the coast. And like many other Christian colleges, we have a pretty limited staff, faculty, and student body. We're limited around 1,200 students because of the area that we're living in. There are other Christian colleges and universities that are larger than us, but in general we tend to be smaller, and so I think that's one of the particular challenges that we face in how do we do real meaningful work in this area, given our small size. But it can also be an opportunity because we can develop very close relationships with this small community and potentially really move ourselves in a place together that I think is very promising. So what do I think are the opportunities and challenges? Well, first, I think we need to really make it part of our institutional missions and our identity to really address these issues, both in how we function and how we do education. We have usually many Christian colleges have a pretty crowded liberal arts curriculum with all kinds of different requirements. How can we infuse that with both celebration and awareness of biodiversity and then real life strategies to engage it? How can we do research in a way that fosters biodiversity action, whether it's from natural or behavioral sciences or social sciences or in the humanities? We tend to have very high teaching loads, and it can be also difficult to get funding for your helping gain awareness and action on these issues. So I'm going to just go through each one of these briefly and give some examples, particularly focused on Westmont and what we're doing and where I imagine we could go. So I think it really needs to be part of institutional mission all the way from the president and the provost to the faculty, student life, facilities, which makes all kinds of key decisions about our water and our energy and our landscaping and our dining commons, which provides a certain array of food types for us, some of which may be high carbon and some of which may not be. How can we work together, and how can we put this into our strategic plan as an institution for where we want to go? And so Westmont in the past year has actually, for the first time, put stewarding creation in our strategic plan. And just putting it in there doesn't make it happen, but it provides a foundation for work in that area. And in fact, one area that we're really excited about right now is that we have just hired our first full-time sustainability coordinator, both funded by the college as well as with grant funding. And I think it's so important for institutions to have dedicated staff to really working on these issues, because everyone is busy, everyone has lots of responsibilities already. How can we pull together? I think there has to be people with dedicated time for this. And so I would love to see this model, which already a few other Christian colleges are pursuing, but really spread across the CCCU. Another unique opportunity that I think Christian colleges have to really engage people as whole people in these issues is through our chapel program, whether it's having particular speakers on these issues or incorporating it into how we do worship, the songs that we sing and the liturgy. It goes quite naturally with the Christian faith to celebrate creation and then also to pray for things that are broken. A few Christian colleges, including Westmont, have flourishing campus gardens. So we've had one for about 10 years, and this can be a really rich opportunity for exploring agroecology, connections between agriculture and biodiversity, and even things like plant-based diets. One initiative at Westmont that I'm really thrilled about is we've been trying to document the species that we have on our campus and really try to celebrate them and spread the word about them. This is a community endeavor, so faculty, staff, students, and even people just visiting campus can contribute to this. We have pages for each major group, and then species pages for the majority of species, where we try to feature things like species notes, photos, audio recordings, videos, and also really make it interdisciplinary. We've incorporated art and poetry, particularly of faculty, but also increasingly of students as well. We are starting a new initiative, so this is something that I'm taking on. I'm taking on my first biodiversity student intern, and I'm really hoping she can play a role in not just contributing to this website, but also making it alive in campus in various ways to reach out to our community, just to educate about the biodiversity that we have living around us and make that a habit for students as well as faculty and staff. Something that I hope Westmont will really move towards in the future is getting stars ranking with the American Association for Sustainability in Higher Education. This is something these other Christian colleges have pursued to great success, and I think it's something that the CCCU should take as a target in general, because there's so many aspects of institutional functioning that it can help you sort of audit and keep track of and set goals. Our curriculum is full of all kinds of things, but it has not maybe historically had a lot of treatment of biodiversity outside of biology, and not a lot of treatment of conservation issues, but that's changing. I think many Christian colleges require religious studies courses. At Westmont, we have a couple of faculty who care deeply about these issues, and their courses are very conducive to engaging them, and they are. We have a lot of general education requirements. We're starting to offer special sections like studies in literature. You can take an environmental section of that. So that's a way to not add to an already crowded curriculum, but sort of make it more targeted. A number of us are also just trying to use more case studies, more applied topics within our theory courses to engage these issues. So there's lots of opportunities there if you're just intentional about it. We continue, as we have for some time, to send students to Ensemble and Creation Care study programs. I think this is something we can actually continue to encourage, not just in biology students, which I think, at least for Westmont, is historically who we've been sending most of these programs, but students from all different disciplines, as there's a lot of richness to be offered from getting off campus and really seeing things in the field or abroad from a different perspective. It's so important to bring people to campus, whether local or global, to tell about the work that they're doing. That's so important for student development, to really see how they might go out in the world and be active and participate in volunteer opportunities. So I bring my classes regularly, for instance, to Santa Rosa Island, where we can help participate in some of their restoration efforts there. And we have a number of internship opportunities for students, and I'm sure that's the case for many Christian colleges, that there's all kinds of opportunities in their local communities where students can really deepen in their understanding of what it actually means to do real good conservation work. Research can be a challenge, as I mentioned, for faculty at small schools, but it can be done. And I think Westmont's a great model for really supporting faculty in research. I have a colleague, Beth Horvath, who has become a world expert on the taxonomy of Gorgonian coral and is consulted by NOAA and other national and international bodies on how to identify the biodiversity of Gorgonians in their region. I personally do a lot of more basic research on reptiles, and I am funded for that. But I think this is an opportunity of how can I design my experiments such that they can actually produce data that might also be useful for conservation and monitoring, because I study species on islands that are not currently being monitored and have had a number of historical human impacts. So I think that's a real opportunity, even for more basic researchers. I've also been pursuing of late urban ecology questions in acorn woodpeckers and fence lizards, and I think for small schools with limited resources, this is a real opportunity to get undergraduates out there collecting meaningful data. So I think we could really grow in urban ecology in particular. And I love the possibilities when you are pursuing these kinds of research questions, really keeping your ear to the ground, the biodiversity living around you. You can engage other folks from other disciplines. These are paintings from an art class that I took out to my research sites across the city with acorn woodpeckers, and I feel like they help me see these communities in new ways, and also themselves and others that have seen this art to really look at the city from a different perspective, and how it might be home for more than just us. I think we're at the very beginning of coordination among Christian colleges on biodiversity. I think there's some ideas, incipient ideas, how we get there. I'm not sure. I think there's lots of potential. I will say Westmont has hosted a conversation on environmental issues a couple of years back that involves both secular and Christian institutions, and that was what actually inspired our environmental studies program, Conversations There. I welcome any of you to come to our conversation on liberal arts this coming spring, Educating for the Unknown, where we're going to be exploring what role liberal arts colleges have to play in responding to the climate crisis. But we're really excited about new initiatives that we're starting this summer, inviting students from across the CCCU and faculty as well as InterVarsity Christian Fellowship student leaders to come to a workshop funded by the Arthur Finding Davis Foundations, where we will be helping folks learn how to talk about climate change in their Christian communities. Something that's been really polarized. How can we bring people together on this topic in a constructive way that's really grounded in our faith? That's our goal, and we're hoping to send them back with support to do advocacy projects in their church and campus communities. Finally, I really think Christian colleges and universities have a real role in outreach to their communities. And Westmont has a number of initiatives that are not just creation-focused, but the organizers have been really intentional about inviting speakers that help introduce into local community conversations, into pastor conversations, a sense of appreciation and knowledge of biodiversity, and the importance of helping their congregations think more about our responsibilities there. And in terms of just work with local churches, just increasing our outreach on helping folks see what's around them and be aware of what's living around them, and then think about these issues from a theological level that hopefully will translate into action. So I see lots and lots of opportunities here. I think we need more sustainability coordinators. We need to be pursuing standards in sustainability. We need to increase treatment in our curriculum and our research. We need to expand our campuses, gardens. I'd love to see something like a biodiversity church extension officer that really reaches out to the community and helps create opportunities for conservation. I'd like to see more coordination among Christian colleges and environmental organizations and nationally across the globe, and then also more engagement with actual conservation management initiatives, which is somewhere I just think we really need to go, and I hope we can together.
So that was a pretty impressive presentation by Amanda, who's here through technology, and she was learning a lot. This is her first COP. She wants to come to some other COPs, the climate COP, and be a part of the conversation and bring her students. And when she talks about the CCCU and the network of Christian colleges and universities in the United States, we're talking evangelical. There's many other traditions that have universities, but within that coalition, it's about 120 or so Christian colleges. So that's the numbers we're talking about. For every state, they serve thousands of students, and we just had a gathering of global Christian evangelical education institutions, and that was a gathering this last month, and so in that conversation, we're also working to service biology, biological education, creation care education through that global network of higher education institutions, the seminaries, colleges, and universities. So I'm going to move on to, since we're in Canada, again, this is a briefing that's kind of selective, and I'm just highlighting and daylighting a couple of things. And this is an organization that probably many folks know about because it's another global organization. One of their strongest country manifestations is here in Canada, and I'm going to share just 3 short videos of some of the work that they do up in Biodiversity here through their communities. They have a community in Vancouver. They have other communities here in Canada, and they care for place and community, people and land and species. And so in Canada, the Species at Risk Act is one of the most influential biodiversity conservation laws that govern plant and animal management. Arusha Canada works to care for multiple species at risk within the watersheds where they work. In British Columbia, this includes multiple fish and amphibians, such as red-legged frogs, western toads, and Salus schleppers. These 3 videos give an introduction to these 3 unique species.
Throughout the Fraser Valley area and region, we focus a lot of our work in the Lillekamo River watershed, focusing on water health and quality and the species that inhabit it. This watershed has undergone significant increases in development and different changes in land structure and use, which has caused an impact on our water systems and the species that rely on it. This system is significant because it does support a lot of different unwanted species, along with other species at risk. Because of our long-term efforts here in the Lillekamo River watershed, we are able to notice and track different changes in our system, so looking at water quality over time, but also presence and absence of species. One of our interns came across an unknown species at the time in one of our ponds and later was identified as the sage sucker, which was thought to have been extricated from this watershed.
I was an intern at Arusha in 2011, and I was doing a conservation science internship. And my project was the pond, and I was figuring out every species, well, trying to catch every species that was living in the pond. So we had these traps that I would throw in 3 different locations around the pond. I would collect the things at the end of every day and remove the invasive species and put the native species back. On the last day of my internship, I came down to the pond, pulled out the trap, and I was like, something is off. The trap is only this big and there's a fish in it that's about this big. I was a bit confused because I had no idea what it was. So we put him in a bucket and ran up the hill. We brought it up and put it in a fish tank. People were getting like more and more excited. We took photos of it and measured it, weighed it and everything, and then put it into the little Campbell River where it should be. I went about my day and went home. Later on, they were like, Audrey, it was a sailor sucker, and we're going to start a huge research project now on this. So it was exciting to find something that really spurred on new projects and also helped with the importance of the watershed.
Since that time, we've been able to continually go out and survey for this fish and try to judge what the population size is, identify critical habitat like where they're spawning, and help to make recommendations on how we can further protect and possibly enhance this population in the watershed. We're experiencing a lot of biodiversity decline and loss in the world, and especially here in the Fraser Valley as well. There are all of these different links in our ecosystems between the plants, the animals, and the soil that create ecosystem function and services, and when you take one piece of that away, you break part of those links. The sailor sucker is threatened due to changes in landscape. We're looking at a lot of declines in our terrestrial forests, and especially our riparian areas around our rivers. And because we're losing those riparian structures, there is a change in the water quality. Things like temperature and dissolved oxygen declines in the water, and this has an impact on this fish and causes decline in their species and their usable habitat. So north of us here we have an area of forest that was taken down and is becoming more of an industrial park, and lots of other shops and businesses are starting to come into that area. Through that forest there was different tributaries that connect with the main stem of the Little Campbell River, and they were pushed over to make room for this industrial park coming in. This area did have a lot of work done on it to make it ecologically functional. So there's lots of planting and different structures put into the watercourseways to help promote fish to return to that area and to use it. In 2019, there were people starting to observe different fish using this stream. So we went and did our own survey, and we found that the sailor sucker has actually started to use this area once again. And we hope to do further research and studies to see if they are spawning and if they are thriving, or if this is poor habitat that they are just being pushed into. We've been doing trapping exercises throughout the watershed to try to identify different areas where we are seeing this fish. We've also been identifying their spawning habitat, so where they are laying their egg masses and where the young are rearing. And now we are transitioning, and we want to try to get a population estimate for the entire watershed. So now that we know some of the hot spots where the species are, we can cover more area and try to create that estimate. And by doing this, we'll be able to track the population better from year to year to see if it is stable or if it is declining. Because we work in this Little Campbell River watershed and all of our efforts are focused on this one place, we are able to have a larger impact.
The next time I saw a sailor sucker was, I think, in 2016. Joel Satori came from National Geographic to photograph species for his photo art collection, and they had found one, and I helped him take the photos that were part of the collection. It's definitely been an adventure, and I'm excited to see what other projects get spun off of this, and that we're finding more and more suckers is so exciting, and I'm thankful that I was part of it.
This is an example, a great story, a touching story of how Christian evangelicals are helping species that are struggling. And we are proposing that, and we can have a response to help change that. I just got 2 more short stories I'm going to share about what evangelicals are doing in Canada here, and this is what Arusha's work is doing. And by the way, they have Arusha all around the world. Seth, a colleague from Arusha, works on lives in Ghana, works to save the upper rainforest. That's a whole big piece of work that Arusha's doing in Africa. I'm from New Zealand. There's a New Zealand chapter of Arusha. They're doing species conservation work in New Zealand. It started in Portugal and in France. There's big chapters there doing incredible work. So Arusha is doing work all around the world. And here's just 3 more stories to encourage you about what we can do when we take our faith seriously and try our best to work to care for creation.
We found out about the western toads in 2013, so we sent a team of biologists and interns, and they found thousands of little western toads migrating out of this pond and across the land. Doing a bit of research, we found out that it's actually an old gravel pit that's been naturalized over time, and so lots of species have started to congregate and breed in that area. Because of that, we started monitoring them annually. We found that they do this northwestern migration, and it's thousands and thousands of toads crossing over multiple different landowner properties, crossing over roads, and eventually dispersing into our terrestrial forests, where they spend the most of their adult life. This is where they forage, this is where they hibernate, so our terrestrial ecosystems are really important for the western toad. They use the aquatic wetlands and ponds to breed and to lay their egg masses, and for the tadpoles to rear in. Wetlands throughout BC and Canada have very limited protection. They can be drained, they can be altered, developed, all those kinds of things. So those species that rely on the wetland habitat are seriously at risk. So that's one of the reasons why the toads are so threatened, is because of the loss of habitat. This pond specifically also has other threats because the toads do a migration across roads. There's a lot of road mortality, both as juveniles when they're leaving the ponds, but as adults when they come back to that same pond to breed each year. In the early spring, as the ground starts to warm up and the air temperature increases, we'll see the adults come out of hibernation and migrate towards the ponds. So we start doing road surveys and we record the GPS locations where we see the toads. In the summertime, the juveniles will emerge out of the pond, thousands of little toads all at the same time. And we do the same road surveys that we do for the adults. We have been tracking to see where the largest amount of mortality happens on the roads as they're crossing, and we're also trying to pick out the travel corridors that these toads use. In that area, mostly we're working with the township of Langley, and we have been able to set up toad crossing signs on the road during these migration periods, and also temporary road closures. We've also, in 2019, set up a fence that would help direct the toads under a culvert. This fence was successful. We did see a decline in the number of road mortalities. We are able to have a larger impact because we get to be here year after year watching the same population in this little Campbell River watershed and working with the people. And a lot of them want to see this population of toads thrive. It encourages a lot of hope, and we see a lot of really, really good work because of that.
One more story. I just want to run these stories. They're so great. And this is this story.
Aurora, the meaning of that word is dawn, and it also describes bright lights in the north. Red-legged frogs, their Latin name is Grana aurora, They got its name because of its translucent red hind legs. They're a beautiful frog found in the Pacific Northwest. Our Russia Conservation Science team has been exploring different wetlands to see whether red-legged frogs were laying their eggs there. We've established our study to 11 consistent sites. We monitor the water quality, then we count any amphibian egg masses we see. And then we also collect habitat data about the dominant vegetation around each wetland and the percent cover of invasive species, also the depth of the wetland. The reason why we're collecting these data is to assess the population of red-legged frogs in this area and to monitor the change over time. They're considered special concern federally and considered threatened provincially. Red-legged frogs spend most of their time in forest habitat, and they migrate every year to wetlands to lay their eggs and breed, and we've been monitoring that part of their life cycle. Amphibians are really sensitive creatures, threatened by environmental conditions. The red-legged frogs in particular are threatened because while they rely on wetlands to breed, they spend most of their time in forest, and our forests are decreasing in the Little Campbell watershed and consistently experiencing more pressure by urban development, agricultural development, climate change. These frogs die in wetlands and meaning the water level is really critical. They're facing predation threat from bullfrogs that are taking over these areas, as well as other invasive species like green canary grass, which often prevents other native vegetation from growing there. We're working with partners to improve habitat around wetlands and to just increase forest cover in general. And there's an opportunity for everyone really to protect them and to improve habitat for red-legged frogs.
Well, I hope you enjoyed learning and hearing a little bit about what Evangelicals are doing, caring for creation, contributing to nature positive future, mobilizing people, communities, churches, students, institutions of higher learning, all focusing on following after God who called us to care for creation. So thanks. Is there any quick question? Because I have just a few more minutes left. Yes. You want to answer? You want to use the microphone?
Sorry?
You want to use the microphone?
Oh, okay. So I'm Kusumita Peterson from the Parliament of the World's Religions, and my question, Chris, is do you have a greening of the congregations program?
Very good question. Yes, we do. We have a Green Church program. Way to set that up. Thank you. We have a Green Church. Russia also has been a leader in that. And do you know about this program? No, okay. I thought you were going up.
Just coming closer.
Okay, coming closer. Yes. It's been prototyped in the UK. It is gone very, very successfully in the United Kingdom. Hundreds of churches are green churches through the Green Church program. I forget the title, the exact name. And that is now being prototyped in other countries. And it is going to hopefully, after working out, any kinks through the prototyping, it will spread through the evangelical network that we have all around the world. So yes, we do have congregational program. And then there's other kind of slices to that congregational program. Some of it is, on their facility, energy, renewables, and so on and so forth. Some of it is in the dining facilities and just transitioning away from plastics and all that type of stuff. Then it's looking at their own property in terms of the species they have there and the landscaping and so on and so forth. So protecting what they have, making the landscaping good for attracting. Also have leadership in them that are also greening their temples and mosques and so on. So that's a global faith-based movement in greening places of worship, which is really fantastic. So thanks for the question. Any other questions? No. Okay, one more.
Are you involved, repeat the question.
Yes.
Are you involved in divestment from fossil fuels?
Are we involved in divestment from fossil fuels? That's a good question. We do have
I
folks.
understand you have many different churches, so it's not a centralized.
Right. I don't think we actually have within WA a initiative focused on divestment. I think this is. We'll put it this way. I think when we think about what to do with our finances and the way we do business, I think we can probably organize ourselves in such a way that we actually put that on the table and discuss it and work through that. And we do have a business coalition. And I know that with the business coalition, I did put together with the person that leads that faith-consistent investment guidance for how as Christians and evangelicals, based upon our understanding of Scripture, how to faithfully invest. And so that would be a part of that, but I think we can make it more robust and we can make it more organized and so on and so forth. And I know that we do work with other faith-based investment facilities that do disinvestment and so on. We know, for example, that the Anglican Church has taken some very significant steps in disinvestment from dirty energy. And we can learn from them and we can be inspired by them. But the thing about this is you can disinvest, but where are you actually going to invest in? What's the positive way that we're going to use our resources? And there is an opportunity for faith, as I did a talk yesterday, on engaging with this program called SDG, Sustainable Development Goals Cities. And that's an opportunity for our investment finance folks and business folks to contribute into helping advancing the SDGs through investment opportunities in urban development, infrastructure, transportation, energy, water, waste, and so on and so forth, and housing. That can make a difference through this SDG program. So there's lots of opportunity. There's a lot of upside. If we're not doing enough now, there's a lot of opportunity for us. And the SDG program, SDG Cities program is one of those opportunities that we have. So with that, I'm going to say thank you. Thanks for being here, and I hope this has been a informative, if very small slice of what we do in the evangelical world when it comes to biodiversity. And next time, I hope it would be my African brother or sister who would take a focus on what African evangelicals are doing and point to all the fantastic work they're doing all across